Tonight, 4 days, 3 countries, multi-billion-dollar investments.
We are going to be your friend and we're going to be your partner.
President Trump ends a high-stakes race through the Middle East, leaving a trail of deals and clues about a potential nuclear deal with Iran.
We have an Iran situation which we're going to take care of. One way or the other, we're taking care.
Economic warning signs, why the prices for your Walmart essentials could soon be going up. Planned Parenthood back in the spotlight, the new push from GOP lawmakers to defund the abortion giant. And Democrat blame game, new accusations over who knew about President Biden's cognitive decline and who looked the other way. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Trump closes a whirlwind Mideast tour with hints of a new Iran deal and $600 billion in investments. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. It's been a week of big moves and big questions. Here to break it all down this week, our panel, Senior White House Correspondent Kelly Wright and Chief Political Analyst David Brody. Both of you, nice to see you. Happy Friday. So President Trump's Middle East trip dominated headlines this week, cutting deals with longtime adversaries and rethinking U.S. alliances. David, what are your big takeaways from the trip?
Well, why don't we just kind of put it this way? Nation building, that's old school. That's old guard. Donald Trump, President Trump, clearly saying nation building hasn't been working. The days of George W. Bush and some of the mainstream establishment Republicans, all of that gone. I mean, that was the big headline to me in that Saudi Arabia speech, basically saying, look, you know, do we want you to yearn for freedom, and do we want, sure, we want all of that, but we're not going to impose our will and our values on a Middle East that has clearly different values, and that is really, if you think about it, shocking and trend-setting for a U.S. president in the last, 30 years or so to do something along those lines. So I thought that was really the big headline here, Jenna.
Yeah, he was saying, you know, commerce over conflict. Kelly, critics worry about what's being traded for stability. Are they right to have some concerns?
I'm not sure about that. I think it still waits to be seen. Look, the president went there for getting something done for the American people, the American workers. When you see Qatar giving $1.4 trillion in investments to the United States, as well as Saudi Arabia giving $640 billion, and the UAE ponying up to the table with $1.2 trillion, that's a windfall for the United States of America in terms of business, in terms of commerce, as well as providing more jobs here in America and bringing a lot of those industries here to the United States. Look, you need a lot of energy development in order to develop AI. That's something these 3 Arab nations are concerned with. They want to be able to be on top, and they want to be able to lead the Middle East. And the president went there for the right reasons, to broker peace through strength and prosperity.
President Trump, he met with Syria's new leader, a former jihadist who was actually once held by the U.S., and President Trump announced plans to lift sanctions. Is this a partner for peace, David, or is it a dangerous gamble for American foreign policy?
I don't know about a partner for peace, but clearly I see what he's trying to do here from a geopolitical standpoint. He's trying to isolate Iran by basically trying to break bread with Syria, break bread, of course, with Saudi Arabia, which has been going on for a while, and get some sort of new Abraham Accords deals with both Syria and Saudi Arabia to recognize the state of Israel, and then basically, as I said at the beginning, isolate Iran. I mean, I get the point here, but it does go to commerce, the commerce issue as it relates to, like, look, well, if we lift the sanctions, you know, your people will be more prosperous, and more prosperity will lead to peace. Whether or not that actually happens remains to be seen. But look, the Syrian president, I mean, let's just call what it is. I mean, he's a bad dude. I mean, this is a guy that used to be with Al-Qaeda, then formed that splinter group of Al-Qaeda, took over Syria, and was arrested by the United States and held in Abu Ghraib and some of these other Iraqi prisons for 5 years by American forces because he was accused of planting explosives. So this is not a guy that's going to win Father of the Year or Boy Scout of the Year. So we should be clear about that.
Yeah, on Iran, in his first administration, President Trump, he tore up that Iran deal. Now he's proposing a new one. Kelly, does this signal a shift in Trump's foreign policy playbook, or is this really just a different version of the same game?
I think you go to the core of what the president said and what Secretary of State Marco Rubio has stated, and that is they want a deal with Iran. And keep in mind what the president told all of the Arab leaders, the Gulf leaders, that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And he also gave a really strong message to the Iranians to stop trying to destabilize the region, make a deal, curb its nuclear appetite, come to the table and agree with the deal, or all bets are off and all of the options are still on the table. That means actually going after Iran in such a way that it creates more sanctions than they can contain. They're already reeling from that in terms of what the president's already imposed upon them. He'd like to give a break to the Iranian people, but to this regime, he wants to make it abundantly clear that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon, and the Arab leaders agree with him on that.
Yeah, so President Trump, he skipped a stop in Israel during his visit to this region. Our team in Jerusalem hit the streets to find out how Israelis are feeling about all of this. Let's listen.
I'm afraid of it. It doesn't smell good for Israel. He's doing very good things for the Middle East. He tried to make peace between the countries, and I hope they succeed.
In one side, I believe in him because he's support Israel, but in the other side, it's look like his benefit it's more important to him than to bring us our kidnapped hope.
Israelis concerned about U.S.-Israel relations after especially learning about Trump's secret talks with Hamas to free an American hostage. David, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, President Trump has the John Lennon strategy, right? Give peace a chance. Bibi Netanyahu, on the other hand, says it's time. Let's strike while the iron is hot. Iran is in a world of trouble as it relates to the defense of their nuclear sites, and it's time to dismantle it. So that's a fundamental difference, and it's going to lead to tension, Jenna.
Okay, David and Kelly, stick with us. Coming up, higher prices at Walmart and lower retail sales nationwide. New questions about Trump's economic policies and what they mean for your wallet. After this. Welcome back. Walmart, now the latest company to say it will raise prices because of tariffs. Walmart is the world's largest retailer. Toys and electronics are among the items expected to soon cost more. Our panel is back with us. Kelly, how is the White House addressing consumer concerns about these prices and the cost of living?
I want to take you back to what the president said on Liberation Day. He said that this is going to inflict some temporary disturbance. And what he meant by that, it's going to cause some pain within the U.S. consumer market. The White House is not taken aback by this or surprised by this, but at the same time, the White House is pivoting, as you've noted. What he has done is extended the trade at 10% across the board until July. Some of these companies are taking action, perhaps in the White House opinion, prematurely, because the president has stated that there is a deal in the works with China, and that some of those prices will come down. At the same time, however, you can understand why some of these businesses are raising their prices, thinking they have to cover their bases because of the tariffs. But make no bones about it, the president will continue on with this. He will pivot where he sees the need to do that in order to protect the American consumer as well as the American retailers.
David, at the same time, retail sales slowed considerably in April. Americans, seemingly pulling back on spending because of the economic uncertainty. What do you make of it all, David, and how concerned are President Trump and the White House at this point?
Well, you mentioned a key word there, and that is the month of April. Let's see what it looks like in May, June, July as we move forward. I think the trend line is important here. There's going to be a lot of give and take, specifically on tariff and trade policy. So we have to wait and see. And really, that is the strategy. If you think about it, 3 words. It's a wait and see. I shouldn't say it's a strategy, but it's a potential outcome, which is just wait and see. We don't know. Quarter 1, not that great. Quarter 2, we will wait to see, wait and see. And then by Q3 and Q4, then we'll have a better sense of the trend line here. And that is why, getting back to budget reconciliation, I know we'll talk about that at some point, but why it is so crucial for the Republicans and for this president to get that done quickly in Q2 so they can start to see potential results in Q3, but definitely Q4. And I think that is what we're looking at here.
Yeah, this week.
David, to add to that, let's say what hasn't been said. And that is the fact that some of these companies would rather raise their prices now in order to seize the moment, in order to boost their bottom line and pass it on to the American consumer. And that has to be stated uncategorically, because that is something that these companies cannot deny. They'll base this on the tariffs and use as an excuse, but it's a chance for them to up the ante for themselves as well.
This week, President Trump, he signed an executive order, switching gears just a little bit, this one aiming to bring American pharmaceutical drug prices more in line with other countries. David, how is this playing with Americans? What's your sense?
Well, we'll wait and see how it actually turns out. I keep saying wait and see. It seems like that's the theme of what I'm saying here. But I will say this. Look, he tried to do this to a certain extent, or actually he actually did it. Tried to do it in his first term, but the courts held that up and there were lawsuits, and I'm anticipating there'll be lawsuits again this time. But let's be clear here. This is unorthodox for not Trump for sure, but for Republican conservative politics. Some will call it price controls. He won't call it price controls. As a matter of fact, he came out and said it's not. As a matter of fact, it's the prescription drug companies that are doing the price controls. But the truth of the matter is, this is something Bernie Sanders should love, and other far-left Democrats. But of course, they're not having any of it either. Yeah,
Kelly, critics are calling it government overreach. Just a few seconds left.
Well, they can call it what they want, but Big Pharma is to blame for its own fault lines, and Big Pharma is the one that's been actually gouging the American people, charging too much money for necessary drugs.
Okay, gentlemen, thanks. Up next, lawmakers debate Trump's sweeping spending bill as the battle over Planned Parenthood returns to center stage. That's next on Faith Nation. And welcome back to our Friday political panel. This week on the Hill, 3 major House committees work to advance portions of the president's big, beautiful bill. It was stalled in the Budget Committee Friday. There's been a lot of infighting from Republicans surrounding tax cuts and Medicaid. David, does this thing get through by House Speaker Mike Johnson's Memorial Day deadline?
Yeah, it's going to be very tough. That's what they're trying for still. I'm not convinced it will. But then again, you know, look, Trump's going to have to close the deal like he always does. I mean, right now, House Republicans can only lose 3 votes total on the final House bill. Remember, this is in, just so everybody understands, right, there's all these 11 committees that are going through this budget reconciliation bill. And then finally, there'll be that one big, beautiful bill that would come out of the House. And that's where they can only lose 3 votes. Bottom line is, there are so many things to go through. I don't know. I have dinner plans, so I can't go through them all, Jenna. But Medicaid, SALT, which is state and local taxes. I mean, there's so much stuff there to the point where Republicans are fighting amongst themselves. And Trump's going to have to close the deal. And he typically is a great deal closer. So I'm thinking it probably gets through, but it's going to be very, very tight.
Yeah. Speaker Mike Johnson.
David, to your point, if I can jump in real quick, I was in the Oval Office last week before the president took his trip to the Middle East. And he was asked this very question. And the president is banking on his experience to be able to talk to Republicans to get them to pass that big, beautiful bill. And he talked about the Medicaid would not be touched. He talked about SALT and everything that he believes is important in order to pass this big, beautiful bill. It is part of a 3-legged stool, if you will. He has to get this done. He has to have deregulation, which he was talking about that particular day. And he needs to make sure that Americans are moving forward, not backwards. So this is part of that, along with the tariffs. So he's very mindful of that. And now that he's coming back to America, he will be on the phone talking to those Republicans who have been reluctant.
Yeah. Speaker Johnson.
And just a quick little addition. I'm sorry. Just a quick, Jenna, just a quick addition on that. Let's be clear. It cannot fail, according to this White House and Republican. I mean, literally, it cannot fail. If it fails, then we might as well go ahead and write the headlines now of a Democrat majority in the House come midterms.
I want to talk to you about Speaker Johnson. He's promising to use this bill as a means to defund big abortion, but there are some, reportedly some GOP House members in some of the battleground states who don't want that language, including one citing the health care services provided by Planned Parenthood. Kelly, how do Republicans come together on this very sticky issue?
That's a very good question. I don't know how they come together on this because it is a very thorny, sticky issue involving pro-life, pro-choice, and Republicans have always been pro-life. It really boils down to that. Actually speaking their conscience, but also understanding what's happening in their local states and how their constituents are responding to some of the things that have transpired. So I think the Republicans really have to look at this, regroup, refocus, and then reassess how they go about getting their messaging across so that it's palpable and understandable and relatable to their very own constituency.
Yeah. David, last word?
Limit distractions. And I hate to call the pro-life issue a distraction. It is not a distraction, just to be clear. But in this context, with all of the other Medicaid, SALT, and go on and on distractions, even some hardline conservatives who are pro-life are saying, you know what, hold on, it's too much water in the boat, Jenna, too much water in the boat.
All right, coming up, guys, Democrats under fire for hiding Joe Biden's decline as the blame game heats up. Well, with Republicans in control of both chambers of Congress and the White House, Democrats are eyeing next year's midterms to gain some power back. But a new Associated Press NORC poll finds out this week that only 1/3 of Democrats are very optimistic or even somewhat optimistic about their party's future. Last July, twice as many Democrats felt positively about the party. David, how do Democrats recover from this? How do they grow their enthusiasm?
They have to move away from the far left policies that they've embraced. It's just that simple. The question is, will they? So the problem for the Democrats has always been that they believe, and to an extent this is true, that the energy of the party is on the far left. That is true. The problem is they have a numbers problem. 15, 20% at the most far left in this country. I think I'm pretty high on that number, by the way. I think it's much lower. So you've got energy, but you have a minimal amount of it coming from 15% or so of Democrats. And then what you have specifically is you look for pro-life Democrats. There used to be so many of them back in the day. Where are they today? Where are the Bart Stupaks of the world? Dare I date myself? But they're nowhere to be found. They're nowhere to be found. And this is the inherent problem with the Democrats. So they're talking about strategy and how they can best position themselves with voters, but it's not about strategy. It can be about strategy at some point, but first you have to actually believe the message that you're selling before you can sell the actual message.
Yeah, then they're also dealing with Joe Biden, who continues to be in the headlines. This week we saw excerpts from a new book by CNN's Jake Tapper and Axios reporter Alex Thompson. They detail former President Biden's cognitive and physical decline during his presidency and the White House's efforts to keep it hidden. Kelly, what's your biggest takeaway from what we've seen so far from this book?
Well, look, what's really happened is a travesty. It's a personal travesty for Joe Biden, who's in an apparent cognitive decline, which many people saw during that debate with now the President of the United States. It's also a travesty in how the media looked the other way. And Jake Tapper has even confessed to that, stating that he didn't go deep enough to look at the president's cognitive skills at that time. And he says for him, it's been a lesson in humility. But the original sin is that people within the White House who saw this cognitive decline, they didn't do the right thing in being transparent. And what really is the original sin is that they did harm to then President Joe Biden. And it's just shameful, really, because here's a man who perhaps could have received a lot of help and care, and everyone could have gotten behind him. Instead, it's torn asunder, and they will forever look at his record and what he did with his policies and blame it on just his cognitive abilities alone, where it might have been something wherein he stepped into a minefield with Afghanistan. As you know, he did not heal the soul of America. In many cases, he will be looked upon historically as breaking the soul of America.
Yeah, David, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, just real quick. Look, this is a perfect example of a confluence of two problems here, right? We've lost faith in our public institutions, especially the media and government. This is the confluence of both. They're coming together, losing faith in the media because they didn't do their job, they didn't do their due diligence. Some will say they covered it up. And the federal government, same thing, applies. And so the inherent problem in America is because we've lost faith in our public institutions, we have a lack of trust, which gives oxygen to lots of other things that can pop up, and who knows what to believe here. But the last thing Democrats want is Joe Biden going on a tour to The View and other places. I mean, that's the last thing Democrats want. So, look, this has just been one debacle after another here, Jenna.
Yeah. Let's switch gears a little bit. This week, David, we saw Pete Buttigieg. He was asked about these resolutions and acknowledged that Biden's decision to run for a second term maybe hurt his party's chances of winning. And he and California Governor Gavin Newsom appear to be positioning themselves for a White House challenge in 2028. Are they emerging as the party's frontrunners?
Yeah, I mean, I think Gavin Newsom is the clubhouse leader, but it's early. Pete Buttigieg will be there. I'm sure he'll announce. Gretchen Whitmer, I think, has plans to, I'm sure, announce at some point. And don't, as they like to say in the 1990s, if I date myself here, don't sleep on Stephen A. Smith. I just find him to be fascinating and a wild card in all of this. So we'll wait and see how it all shakes out. But Gavin Newsom's an interesting guy. I mean, you could put the word chameleon with him. He governed as a far-left governor. Now he's trying to come back and be conservative. So if he ran, I'm not, by the way, conservative, more moderate, I should say. So if he ran, he would run far left in the primary, go more moderate in the general, and then if he ever won the presidency, would become back to far left, most likely, because that's his track record. So yeah, it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, Kelly, a final word on that?
Got to watch Gretchen Whitmer. She is the one who's bold enough to go into the White House, a Democrat governor of Michigan, the swing state that gave President Trump part of his 47th historical win as the 47th president. Look, the bottom line is Whitmer knows how to engage with Democrats and Republicans. She is on top of a very important state. She could wield a lot of power. Stephen A. Smith will be entertaining and in many ways unconventional and inspiring, just like Donald Trump is.
Yeah. All right, David Brody, Kelly Wright, gentlemen, thank you. Both of you have a great weekend. Good to see you.
You too.
Thanks, Jenna.
All right, we're going to leave it on that note for Faith Nation this week. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you right back here Monday. Take care.